A Letter of Instruction by Joseph Smith 3 Part 7, 28. Is there just reason to believe that a successor to the present incumbent of the office of President of the High Priesthood is sufficiently clearly designated to warrant the Church in making a choice in case of the death of such incumbent? The right to give revelation belongs to God. Necessarily, the giving or withholding of revelation is determined by His wisdom, and is not governed by the desires of those who believe in revelation, nor by the necessities and exigencies of the Church judged only by the wisdom of men. Hence, in the light of what has been stated, in answering the questions going before, there is just reason to believe that if no further revelation should be accorded the Church, more specifically directing who should be chosen to succeed, in case of the removal of the present incumbent by death, the Church would be justified in proceeding to make such choice upon what has already been vouchsafed, bearing upon the subject. It must be taken for granted that He who has watched over the Church since its establishment in the days of Adam and of Enoch up to the present must be accredited with the all-pervading wisdom that provides for every exigency through which the Church may be called to pass. It is upon this fact that the confidence of the Church must rest, to the effect that apparent direction for the accomplishment of certain designs has been given, and further and more definite direction does not follow. The Church is justified in pursuing that course which is to it justified by the spirit of wisdom and revelation resting with it in its various quorums and organizations, for the various works of the Church. As we are distinctly told, that our ways are not like His ways, our thoughts are not like His thoughts, the Church is justified in doing that which is necessary to be done, by the wisdom that may be given it at the time such work is to be done, if no specific direction is given how such work shall be performed, and there is abundant evidence to justify the belief, that if the Church will pursue such principle the Lord will not permit the work entrusted to their care to suffer from failure upon His part to give such specific direction, much as His people may have desired it should have been given. One of the reasons why it is difficult to answer the foregoing questions, with apparent satisfaction to all, is that the only precedents established by the Church are those incident to the choice and installation of Joseph Smith, Jr., the first president, and the choosing and ordination of his successor in 1860, so far as the choice of the president direct is concerned. The choosing and appointing of a presiding officer by those engaged in the reorganization can scarcely be regarded as a precedent, except so far as a recognition of the rightful successor, by the choosing of one to represent him, and the many spiritual manifestations connected with the choosing of such a representative and his associate officers of the Church. It will be remembered by those conversant with the action taken by the reorganization, and those who have read the history of those events, that the spirit of prophecy accompanied the various efforts of those who had held the priesthood through ordination and administration of the martyred president and patriarch, and foreshadowed each successive movement. In answer to prayer, those men were, by revelation, directed to the Book of Doctrine and Covenants as containing the rules of law in the observance of which the foundation and superstructure of complete reorganization could be safely accomplished. The effect of this recognition of the revelations given during the formative period of the Church and that which was done under the observance of the instructions therein given, practically reduced the interregnum which it is charged interrupted the onward sweep of the Church in its office work, from the 16 years elapsing between 1844 and 1860, to the 8 years elapsing between 1844 and 1852, 8 years instead of 16. It is a fortunate circumstance that the Conference of 1852 was held fully 2 months before the promulgation of the so-called Revelation on Plural Marriage, and the action taken at that time shows beyond successful dispute, that the supervising spirit of the work had wisely forestalled the spirit of the adversary which sought to destroy surely the spiritual building of the Church organized in 1830. Each successive step following that conference up to the April Conference of 1860 strongly confirms the line of instructions given in answers to the questions above stated. The Church is not at liberty to accept or to follow the precedent supposedly established by the action of the Quorum of 12 in the fall of 1844, in the 12 taking absolute charge of the administration of the affairs of the Church, which culminated in 1847 in the installing of a presidency by taking 3 from the then 9 adhering members of the 12 existing at the death of the prophet, and installing them in the presidency of the Church with Brigham Young as their chief, which action was followed by public proclamation of the plural marriage dogma with its concomitant corruptions of the doctrines of the Church, through the revelation and the restoration of the gospel.